Hello, I'm Mohsen Jamal and you watch Afghan News. Afghan Taliban and their Pakistani sympathizers have turned the Kharotabad area in the southwestern outskirts of Baluchistan's capital Quetta in Pakistan into a safe haven and a veritable vacation spot, raising fears among the people of possible strikes by US drones. Taliban fighters every 4 months return from the war front in Afghanistan to rejuvenate and convalesce in dozens of rented residential accommodations in Kharotabad neighborhood, the Express Tribune reported on Monday. The Pakistani newspaper said the presence of Taliban was becoming a major concern for people living in the adjoining areas who fear that US may carry out missile strikes anytime, the paper added. Madrasas in Kharotabad are providing free accommodation to these militants and are big recruitment centers for the Taliban, with 6 to 8 new fighters being inducted for jihad in Afghanistan every month. The paper added that the Afghan and local Taliban wounded during missions in Afghanistan are reportedly receiving free medical treatment at 5 prominent private hospitals, a majority of which are situated on the airport road. A suicide bomber on foot has targeted the convoy of an intelligence chief in an attack in the northern Faryab province, killing a young boy, the provincial deputy governor says. Abdul Sattar Bari says the bomber struck as the convoy of General Syed Ahmad Sadat, the province's intelligence chief, was driving by on his way to work at 8:30 a.m. local time on Monday in the provincial capital of Maimuna. Bari says a young boy, roughly 3 years old, was killed while Sadat and 4 of his bodyguards were wounded. Faryab is in a relatively peaceful area of Afghanistan where a US-led coalition is battling the Taliban and affiliated insurgents. The United States shifted hundreds of its troops to the Afghan area bordering Northwaziristan on Sunday, along with heavy arms and gunship helicopters, and sealed the Pak-Afghan border for all types of movement, a Pakistani daily reported on Monday. Tribesmen living in the border areas said Afghan and US authorities had claimed a curfew in the Gurbaz area of Afghanistan's Khost province and started house-to-house searches. Pakistan's The News reported the abrupt deployment of US forces near the border area with Pakistan has escalated tension in the militancy-plagued North-Waziristan tribal region as US forces immediately sealed the main Ghulam Khan Khost highway for traffic. The newspaper cited sources as saying that US forces had set up a huge military base across the border and shifted gunship helicopters, heavy tanks, long-range artillery guns and other heavy weapons to the border area. NATO warplanes were also seen flying over the border region several times during the day, the villagers in the Ghulam Khan said. General Baz Muhammad Ahmadi, Deputy Minister of Interior for Counter-Narcotics, who heads an Afghan government delegation, is arriving in Tajikistan Tuesday for a 5-day working visit. The Afghan embassy in Dushanbe said Ahmadi will meet with senior representatives of Tajikistan's Interior Ministry, State Committee for National Security and Drug Control Agency, as well as the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime Country Office in Tajikistan. The delegation has a target to discuss ways of expanding cooperation between Afghan and Tajik special services in the areas of combating drug trafficking and conducting joint operations on neutralization of transnational crime groups. Pakistan said on Monday that Afghan and US-led forces had failed to take action against a Taliban cleric responsible for a spate of cross-border raids despite repeated requests from Islamabad. The raids in which militants loyal to Maulavi Fazlullah took part have left about 100 members of Pakistan's security forces dead, angering the military, which faces threats from multiple militant groups. Fazlullah was the Pakistani Taliban leader in Swat Valley before a 2009 army offensive forced him to flee. Fazlullah, who was also known as FM Mullah for his fiery radio broadcast, managed to regroup in Afghanistan and establish strongholds and local support and poses a threat to Pakistan, once again said Pakistani Army spokesman Major General Athar Abbas, referring to a border region in northwest Pakistan which was relatively stable before the cleric's main recently staged attacks their own security forces. Abbas said that Fazlullah and his group are trying to re-enter Swat through Dare. Iran demanded consular access on Sunday to a man held in the United States over a suspected plot to kill the Saudi ambassador and vowed to respond robustly to any inappropriate measure by the West. Mansour Arbabsir, who holds U.S. and Iranian citizenship, was arrested in September over the plot which Tehran called a fabricated comedy show, but which U.S. lawmakers said was very real and showed the need for tougher sanctions on Iran, accusing Washington of inventing the plot to divert attention from the Occupy Wall Street protest. The Iranian Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei said that any inappropriate measure against Iran, whether political or security related, will be strongly confronted by the Iranian nation. U.S. authorities announced the plot on last Tuesday, saying Arbabsir, a naturalized U.S. citizen, had paid a U.S. undercover agent posing as a Mexican drug cartel hitman to assassinate Saudi ambassador Abdel Al-Jubeir. President Barack Obama, the United States president, said Thursday that Iran would face the toughest possible sanctions and the United States would not take any option off the table. The standard code to refer to possible military action. Troops loyal to Yemeni President Ali Abdullah Saleh and forces opposed to his rule have been engaged in heavy fighting across much of the capital Sana'a, with rockets, mortars and heavy machine guns being used. The fighting began shortly after midnight on Monday and intensified into the early hours of the morning, with the sound of explosions rocking many parts of the city. There were no overall casualty figures immediately available, but at least 3 people were killed in a central encampment housing tens of thousands of protesters. Pro-Saleh forces have frequently fought with rival tribesmen and renegade troops of the 1st or more Division in Sana'a, but Monday's fighting was the most intense in weeks. On Sunday, at least 5 protesters and 7 pro-revolution soldiers were killed during a demonstration in the Yemeni capital by troops loyal to Saleh. Libyan interim government forces said on Monday they had raised the country's new flag over Bani Walid, one of the last bastions of pro-Muammar Gaddafi loyalists. Along with Gaddafi's hometown Sirte, Bani Walid has been one of only 2 towns in Libya where there is still armed resistance to the rule of the National Transitional Council. Colonel Abdullah Nakr, head of the Tripoli Revolutionist Council, said on Sunday that they have reached the city center of Bani Walid and have raised the flag. Meanwhile, in Sirte, where Gaddafi loyalists have been under siege for weeks, there was little or no sign of NTC forces making any progress on Monday. A doctor for the medical and aid charity Médecins Sans Frontières in Sirte has estimated 10,000 people remain trapped in the city of 75,000 residents. And that the Arab League has announced that it plans to bring together Syria's government and opposition groups to seek ways to end the violence in the country. Hamad bin Jassim Al Thani, Qatar's prime minister, said, defying calls for Syria's suspension from the regional body over a worsening army crackdown on political unrest. The League decided on Sunday to form a committee to forge dialogue between the government and opposition. After an emergency meeting of Arab foreign ministers in Cairo, the Egyptian capital, the League's Secretary General Nabil Al-Arabi said that they will call all of the parties of the opposition government to hold a dialogue within 15 days. The League had met to discuss whether to suspend Syria, increasing pressure on the Assad government to end its security crackdown on anti-government protesters. Many Gulf states have pulled their ambassadors out of Syria in protest against President Assad's crackdown, which the United Nations says has killed more than 3,000 people. And that's all for now. Thanks for staying with us.